I was watching a Twitch broadcast the other night of Hearthstone being played. It was Kriparian's channel, and the question came up, how many arena wins are average? Kriparian did a pretty good job of answering it. He was very close to it, but I thought, I've heard this question before, and I've thought about it quite a bit, and I thought, well, this is probably a good opportunity to do a presentation on how many arena wins are average. To start off, I think it would be good to give a small primer on Hearthstone, although probably most of you who are seeing this video have a lot of experience with Hearthstone. I think it's probably good for people who are here from other areas who are not that familiar with the game to get a little bit of a primer. First of all, Hearthstone is an internet card game, although it has lots of different aspects to it. It's multiplayer, it's online, it has a battle arena aspect to it. Through its hero classes, it has some RPG elements as well. So it's got lots of different elements. It's created by Blizzard, who also does World of Warcraft and StarCraft, and it's really, really beautiful game. It's animated and colorful, and it's very, very cool. The cards that we're talking about are from a unique library. It's not the 52 bicycles that you expect to see in Las Vegas, but a unique electronic card collection. There's not cards you can put in your hand, but they're electronic. There's the current library is a total of about 750 cards now that you can collect from, and they're really cool. They've got dragons and demons and spells and weapons and all kinds of cool things on them. So this is the collection that you, or the library that you collect from. And from that, you build a personal deck of typically 30 cards, and you take that into combat. So that's the idea. You have your own collection, you build a deck, and you go into combat. It should be stated that there's both strategic and tactical elements to this game. The strategic parts being, the purchasing of packs and what collection to purchase from, and destroying cards to create others, and which battle format to employ, and so on and so forth. The tactical elements are those in each individual combat or game that you play. It's really kind of cool that it has both those aspects to it. That's kind of a growing part of video gaming at this juncture. The kind of competition that you face, first you'll probably see artificial competition when you go through the tutorial. You'll play against the computer, but the computer's available to play against anytime you want. And if you play in the adventures, those two, you'll play against an artificial intelligence. And you can also play against real people, either randomly. So you build your deck and you go into a competition, and the computer will randomly select an opponent, or you can actually play against a buddy. So you can select the real person that you play against, or someone from your friend list or whatever. There are 4 different battle arenas that are used in the game. The first is something called constructed. That's the process that I described up above. From your collection, you build a deck of 30 cards and take it into battle, and it's called constructed because you construct your own deck. Another way to do it is through adventures. Adventures are an additional purchase that you make in the game, and you play a bunch of kind of unique scenarios against unique monsters and bosses. And it's loosely tied to a storyline, and they're quite a bit of fun, and you play against the computer. Another one is a brawl. Every week there's a new brawl available for you to play in. You play against a real opponent, but all the brawl is just kind of a tweaking of the rules. And so you play kind of this weird warped version of the game, and it's a lot of fun. But the one that we really want to talk about is something called Arena. Arena is where you play against real opponents. To understand this, we'll do a quick Arena primer. To get into Arena, there's a cost to get in. So first thing you do is you pay your money, and you can either pay real money or you can pay using your in-game gold. And there's lots of ways to obtain in-game gold, daily quests, and doing well in prior arena runs and some others, and meeting certain milestones in the game, and you can collect gold and use that gold to enter the arena. You're not really gambling, though, because there's actually rewards. So when you exit the arena, you're done with your arena play. You'll get cards, and you'll get more in-game gold, you'll get dust to create cards, you'll get cards themselves packed, you get all kinds of stuff. So there's rewards available. And the fact that you pay money actually factors into the calculation that we're going to do at the end of this thing. You build your deck differently. So instead of going to your unique library and building your unique collection and building a deck of 30 cards, you build a deck through what's called a draft. The first thing you do before you draft is to select your hero. There are 9 different hero classes you can choose from. And this is kind of your own persona, whether you're a warrior or a magic user or priest or something like that. And then from that, you draft cards. And the way the draft works is you're presented 3 cards from which you select one, and then you do that process 30 times. So that's how you build your 30-card deck, is through 30 single card selection from 3 choices. And the purpose of this is to essentially create a more level playing field. It doesn't completely, but the idea, obviously in the constructed world, is the more you play and the more money you spend and all that, you get a bigger card collection, and from that you can construct better decks. Some people refer to this type of game as a pay to win. I'm not quite that cynical, but the arena was designed to be more of a level playing field. The opponent selection, the people that you're going to face in this thing, it's really interesting how they're selected. First of all, they're selected because they have a similar win-loss record. So when you go into the arena and you've got your deck, you play it again and again and again. Every time you play, you'll play against the person who has a similar win-loss record at that point in their arena run. So if you're like 8-0, you're going to see an opponent who's 8-0 or 7-0, 8-1, whatever, something very close. So that's how they select your opponent. It's also interesting to consider, and by the way, this selection criteria actually impacts the final calculation as well. But it's just as interesting to consider what they don't consider when they select an opponent, that it's not affected by other indicators. So there's a lot of other data on you as a player that Blizzard has. They know how much money you've spent. They know how much experience you've got, how many games you've played. They know your rank in the constructed area of the game. They know a lot of things, but these don't impact how you're selected. Neither is the hero class you've chosen, so they're not purposely pitting a hunter against a hunter or hunter against a non-hunter. So those things don't come into play, and it's not affected essentially by some quantification of the draft potential. So they don't say, well, here's the 90 cards you selected from, and they kind of are this good, and so you're going to face people who had a similar draft potential. That's not part of it either. Hint, hint, Blizzard. So those aren't part of it. But the important thing to consider now is how do you get out of the arena? And there are three different ways that you can exit. The first of which is that you lose 3 times. So you've got this deck, and you play and you play and you play. And the moment you get that third loss, your deck is erased and you're given your reward, and out you go. And if you want to get back in, you've got to start over again. Same thing is true with 12 wins. So if you win 12 wins, there's a nice little fanfare, trumpets play, and you get your rewards, but your deck is erased and off you go. And the third exit criteria is retirement. At some point, if you're no longer happy with the deck, you don't want to play it anymore, you can actually hit a button that says retire, and it essentially erases that deck and it gives you a reward, and off you go. So those are the 3 ways that you exit. And when we're talking about calculating the average number of wins for arena, we're talking about people who have exited. So only those people who have exited, not the people in the middle of an arena run. Now, just if you didn't know, you can actually save your deck and come back and continue your arena run on another day. That's perfectly possible. You don't have to play it all in one sitting, so to speak. But retirement is actually not just quitting for the day. It's saying, I'm done with this deck. So that's the difference. So let's first consider the circumstance where you exit on 3 losses. And the first thing to understand is, well, here's this happy guy, and yes, that's a figure that's left over from my Mafia videos. And so this is a guy that's played once, and he's all green and happy because he won. But what he may or may not realize is that along with him, there's this poor soul that lost. You see, the Hearthstone arena is a zero-sum circumstance where for every win there is a loss, and it's important. They always come in these pairs. So you get a pair, another pair, and another pair. So every time you or another person plays and wins, there's a person who lost, or you lost, there's another person who won. So they always come in pairs. It's an important thing to consider, because if every single person were to exit the game with the 3 loss criteria, they would all have exactly 3 losses, and the average number of losses would be exactly 3. And since the number of losses equals the number of wins, then the number of average wins would be exactly 3, even though not everybody had 3 wins. Some with 0, some with 8, some with whatever. It doesn't matter. The average is still the same, because the total number of wins divided by the total number of people is the same, whether you're a green or a red, it doesn't matter. So if everybody exited using 3 losses, there would be an exact average number of wins of 3 in the arena. But that's not the only way people exit. The second consideration is those circumstances where people leave with 12 wins. And to understand that, we want to start with looking at folks who lose 3 times. This will give you an idea. So here's this person. This is the same person over and over again. He played 11 times, and 8 times he was the green guy. He was a happy guy. He won 8 times, and he lost 3 times. So I put the 8 over the 3. So this column represents one person. And then there's this, that's me. Oh yeah, that's me. 0-3, poor guy. He entered the arena, didn't win at all, lost 3 times, and out he goes. And you have other folks coming in. They might get a win, or they might get a few wins. You might get a whole population of folks like this. So this is kind of a whole closed economy of arena. And because we've got a zero-sum circumstance, believe it or not, the number of little red dudes is equal to the number of little green dudes on top. And this is kind of how you would graph, this is basically a way to examine this. And sure enough, there's 54 total wins for the 18 people that are there, and the average is 3. And it doesn't matter if you're calculating reds or greens at this point. Then along comes this guy. Yeah, we all know this guy. We see him on Twitch TV all the time playing Hearthstone. I won't give you names, but they're these 12-win guys that come along. They got so many wins, I can't even put them in a single column. They got to hog 2 columns just to count all their wins. And they say, look at me. I add to our value. Look, for us now, there's 66 wins shared amongst 19 people. And I raise our average to 3.5. Aren't I wonderful? To which you say, wait a second. There's this zero-sum concept that you seem to be ignoring. And the fact of the matter is that to get that 12-win person, some of the wins from the other folks have to shift over. And so these poor guys in the front of the queue here lost all their wins. And now you have a closed economy again. And sure enough, Hearthstone is a closed economy, the way it works. Granted, there are millions of players, but it's still a closed economy. And now we're back to 54. We've got 54 wins shared now amongst 19 people. And the average drops to 2.8. And so, the economists among you can poke fun at me down in the comment section, but essentially when you look at a closed economy like this, a very wealthy person not only hoards all of the resources for themselves, but they deplete the overall value of the community. And this is what happens. So the same thing is true in Hearthstone, and I dubbed it the Hearthstone Effect. So this is the infamous Hearthstone Effect. And that is the effect that the super wealthy have, or the super winners have, on the overall availability of wins for the community. Probably the best way to look at this is let's combine it to a much smaller number of folks. It's easier to see. So we've got these 4 poor players that have lost 3 times each and the 12-win person. So it's kind of a nice closed system here. You've got the same number of red dudes as green dudes. And now we've got 12 wins shared by 5 people, and you can see the average is 2.4. So it's considerably lower than 3. What's interesting to watch is that when this 12-win person actually loses their first game, they allow one of the other members of the community a win. And so you now have 13 wins shared by 5 people, and that brings the average up to 2.6. The second loss gives you 14 wins, so another fortunate person gets a win in the community. Shared by the same 5 people, it goes to 2.8, and under this nonsensical circumstance, you can't have both 12 wins and 3 losses. You can go 11-3, or you can go 12-2, but you can't go 12-3. But anyway, that just shows you once you've encumbered your third loss, you have brought the average back up to 3 per person. Let's look at the moment for retirement. So now we have a circumstance where we have a person who has 8 wins, and now you notice that there's extra wins available. So they had 8 wins, they retired, they don't have any losses. And so we still have the 12 wins shared by 5 people. It's the same number we saw before, as an average of 2.4. And as this person encumbers a loss, the same thing happens. So it goes to 13 wins for 5 people, 14 wins for 5 people, and 15 wins for 5 people. So it didn't matter that they were 12-0. Even an 8-0 person has kind of the same overall effect. And that's true even if a person wins once and gets out. I have to laugh. How do you win once and then retire? I think it's a kid whose mom found out he was using her credit card and she shut him off. And so he retires the big 1-0. And so same thing, you got 12 wins shared by 5 people. But if he encumbers a loss, there's an additional win available and so on. The number goes to 13, 14, 15, and you get the average again. What about the person that loses once? And this is probably a more common scenario. You knew it was a crappy draft. You drafted a crappy deck. You played it to confirm it was a crappy deck, and you said, I'm done. And so you lost once and retired. And you notice now that this is actually just a person with 0 ones, that it's already advanced to the 1-loss circumstance. And if you had a second loss or a third loss, it just goes back to right what we had before. So it really doesn't matter. Retirement kind of has the same functionality as the 12-win person. They both decrease the total average. So we know that the cap is 3. So what have we learned? Well, the first thing we learned is that Hearthstone's pretty awesome. That's the first thing we learned. The second thing is that Arena is a zero-sum circumstance. So for every win, there's a loss and vice versa. And it's important and understand how we calculate this final number. We learned about the Hearthstone Effect. We know that those individuals, they get lots and lots of wins without encumbering losses, actually not only hoard wins for themselves, but they make fewer wins available to the rest of the community. That's something called the Hearthstone Effect here. And the last thing is, drumroll please, the average number of wins in Hearthstone Arena is, well, it starts at 3, and then we consider the number of folks that got their 12 wins. Now, this number is actually not all that big relative to the millions of people who play in the arena, simply because of the opponent selection process. So Hearthstone, Blizzard very wisely chose to pit people of similar records against each other because it forces those really top players to scramble over each other to get to that 12-win mark to get out. And so they will knock each other down the stack, and only a few of them will rise to that top. And the number of 12-win exits would be much larger if it was a completely randomization of opponent. Fortunately, I think Blizzard chose this so that more wins were available to the community, and that's more encouraging. And of course, it makes them more money, but it's actually a much more encouraging circumstance. So I would suggest to you that the number of 12-win exits is actually very, very small. And because you have to pay to get in, the number of retirements is very small, plus rewards and everything else. So even if you draft a crappy deck, you're probably going to play it out just to see if you can get a little extra out of it. The benefits still kind of outweigh the costs at that point. And so there's probably very few retirees. Now, Blizzard could probably calculate this in a very empirical way. But I'm going to estimate that the average number of wins in Arena is actually just very, very slightly less than 3. So the cap is 3 if everybody left with exactly 3 losses. But because of retirement and 12-win exits, it's something just slightly less than 3.